since I'm getting back to Amphibia, it's really appropriate for me to actually review the episode Dating Season, since that it's mostly a Valentine's Day episode, despite the fact that it's not a Valentine's Day episode. And before any of you ask, either right now or next year, there was a Amphibia Valentine's Day episode, since that this show also had Halloween episode last year, but at the same time, I don't keep up with this show, and I don't keep up with the amount of episodes that this show has. I mean, like I said in my last review, I am trying to keep up with this show, but not like everyone else. Anyway, this episode is called Dating Season, and for the world that Andy and Sprig are in, with multiple frogs being populated while also the other creatures are completely dangerous, I gotta say, for how this episode is laid out, makes me appreciate the characters and the fact that the humor is still at its best. Sprig's family, minus Polly, are oblivious of the fact that he's in a romantic relationship with Ivory. So, for the majority of this episode, they glorify the relationship because it can lead them to bigger witches, and while Annie lets us shade that she is so into shipping and the fact that she's basically one of the viewers who instantly loves shipping. And I gotta say, Annie has pretty much the best dialogue in any other episode, and that is saying a lot. But when we get to Sprig and Ivory's interactions with each other, they do not like any of this whatsoever. In fact, Ivory went through the same thing that Sprig went through when it comes to the other characters putting them into ridiculous outfits. And to be quite honest, I wouldn't blame them on them just completely leaving the festival and then do it their own way. So, in all honesty, this entire episode, despite being mostly cliched, I still actually found somewhat of an enjoyment out of this entire episode from beginning to end. I get that this cliche has been done so many times to the point that it's starting to become a little bit overrated, but from my perspective, I really like this cliche if it's executed better. I mean, it's cute, obviously, but when it comes to the humor from the other characters, it makes this cliche worth the enjoyment in this entire episode. And the reason why is because of Polly. Because she doesn't care about any of this, and yet she is still with the other characters in this entire episode. Seriously, the lines that she gives while also just being the voice of reason is honestly what makes this episode really hilarious. Polly is one of those characters that can actually make you really laugh out loud at the right moments, but also admire on the fact that she's actually the voice of reason in this episode. In fact, there are some episodes in this show that sometimes make her the voice of reason instead of a comic relief. And if you ask me, if she wasn't part of this episode would have been less funny than it is. With the arguments between the families over the romantic relationship despite being a misunderstanding, that would have been something that can easily kill this episode's credibility. Granted, I do enjoy this cliche, but still. Sprig in this episode is a lot more different compared to his other episodes' appearance. I mean, sure, he is a comic relief and also Annie's best friend, but since that he's a main character in this episode while also being in a relationship with someone who isn't part of his family, I honestly think that his motivations in this episode is really understandable, since he's just trying to be serious while the other characters are just glorifying his relationship with Ivory. And when we see him and Ivory leaving the festival in order to have some time alone, it really goes to show that it doesn't have to be in a loving relationship in order to make the shipping work. And before you ask, no, I do not ship Sprig and Ivory. I'm just pointing that out there. I mean, when it comes to my shipping on other cartoons, that's a different story. All in all, I honestly think that Sprig in this episode is funny, but also knows how to be serious in moments like this. It really goes to show that he actually knows what's truly going on when it comes to his family just completely adoring a huge misunderstanding that they instantly miss. Granted, they were being selfish, but at the same time, their subplot is more personal when it comes to the main plot. Getting to Ivory, since this is the first time we get to see her, she's alright. Considering that she pulls pranks on Spike by attacking him, but not intentionally but for fun, I honestly think that she's more adventurous when it comes to her spending her free time for herself. I know there's nothing else to discuss about her, but since that she's supposedly Spike's love interest in this show at least, we're probably going to see more of her in the later episodes. As for the monster, or in this case monsters of the episode by this show's logic, we get to see lovebirds who are very vicious against anyone except having each other. I wouldn't say that these are the best creatures from the show because not only is this the first season still and they're gonna improve as the series goes on, they're just also plot devices in order to have the plot have some kind of an action scene into it. And in all honesty, even if some of the episodes don't have an action sequence in it, I honestly think that for what they do in this episode is mostly forced for the fact that Spike's family and Ivory's family are just bickering each other just to get what they want, despite the fact that they're just misunderstood. Or just oblivious, or whatever you prefer. However, even that flaw isn't enough to make me overlook how good this episode is. Even with it being cliched, it's cliched has executed much more better with the humor, and we actually get some character development from Spike. So all in all, I really found this episode really enjoyable. Granted, it's going to take time for me to watch the next episode and review it for my next review of Amphibia, but who knows. As of now, I'm actually kind of thankful that I'm reviewing this episode as part of Valentine's Half Month 3. I give this episode a 7.5 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole